Good evening, dear past presidents, council members, guests, and ISL staff. You all are welcome for Professor E. Pereira Memorial Oration. Kindly stand up for presidential procession. I now cordially invite following distinguished personnel to light up the traditional oil lamp, starting from Engineer Professor Mrs. Niranjani Ratnayaka, President IESL, Engineer Professor T.M. Pallavatta, President-elect, two senior past presidents, Engineer Newton Wickramasuriya, Engineer Mrs. Lanka Hathurusingha, Engineer Palitha Manchanayaka, guest speaker, representatives of the family of late Engineer E.O.I. Pereira, Engineer Lawrence, Engineer Brian, Dean of University of Peradeniya, Engineer Professor Leland Rajapaksa, Engineer Nila Besekara, CEO Executive Secretary, myself, and Engineer Lalit Pallegama, Chairman, Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, ISL. Please remain standing. I cordially invite the President to garland Professor E.O.E. Pereira's photograph. Thank you very much. Kindly be seated. I invite President ISL, Engineer Paritha Samarasinghe, and the Chairman of the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, Engineer Lalit Pallegama, to come to the stage. Madam, it's your turn to give away the welcome address.
Past presidents, council members, Dean and academic staff of Faculty of Engineering, University of Pereira, family members of Vidya Jyoti Engineer Professor E.O.E. Pereira, our speaker today, Engineer Paritha Manchanayaka, engineers, well-wishers, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor for me to welcome you all to this very important event in the calendar of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, where we are honoring the father of engineering education in Sri Lanka. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to have a student of Professor E.O.E. Pereira as our speaker today. Late engineer Professor E.O.E. Pereira was born on September 13, 1907 and received his education at the Royal College, Colombo, where he excelled in both studies and sports. He won the D'Souza Science Prize, the Muhammad Ali Arithmetic Prize, and Evans Prize for Mathematics, which is shared with Mr. Dantonji Obesekara. In 1928, he entered the University College, Colombo, and graduated with a first-class honours degree from University of London, gaining first place in the Faculty of Science and winning the Engineering Scholarship. The scholarship enabled him to enter Downing College, Cambridge, where he gained the distinction of being the only graduate to finish the 3-year degree program in 2 years. From University of Cambridge, he graduated with first-class honours in Mechanical Sciences, Tripos, in 1931. He served in the Department of Public Works for 15 years before joining the teaching staff of University of Ceylon in 1946. Considered as the father of modern engineering education in the country, Professor E.O.E. Pereira was responsible for putting in place the foundations on which higher education in engineering in Sri Lanka is built up on today. Called upon to provide leadership when the country decided to educate its engineers in its own soil, he had to literally start from scratch in establishing the first faculty of engineering in the country. At first in temporary settings, starting at the Ceylon Technical College in Maradana, and then in a shed at Thurston Road premises of the now University of Colombo, before it found its permanent accommodation at Pereira at the now Faculty of Engineering premises of the University of Pereira. In fact, the fact that the University of London decided to withdraw its external BSc Engineering degree being conducted up to that time at the Ceylon Technical College made the task entrusted to him all the more daunting. Not only did he have to hurriedly scramble the necessary academic staff, but also attend to the acquiring of the most appropriate equipment for the laboratories that was being built at the new faculty, while also overcoming the administrative hurdles thrown across his path. That he achieved his goals successfully and reigned as the Dean of Engineering Faculty for 2 decades before he was given the Vice Chancellorship of University of Pereira as a crowning glory speaks volumes of his greatness. The title Vidya Jyoti was conferred on him in 1986 in due recognition of his services to the nation. Engineering education today has many challenges. It has to foster the right type of skills, attitudes and behavior that will lead to sustainable and inclusive growth while preserving the environment. It has to keep up with the rapid changes in technology in an era where artificial intelligence is taking over run-of-the-mill decision-making processes and operations replacing humans. This year's memorial lecture is on the topic Water Resources and Hydrological Forecasting, to be delivered by Engineer Palitha Manchanayaka. Engineer Palitha Manchanayaka had his education at Royal College, Colombo, the same school that Prof. Pereira and his 2 sons have attended. He entered the Faculty of Engineering of University of Ceylon, Pereira, and graduated with honours in civil engineering in 1972. He then joined the irrigation department as an irrigation engineer. Palitha carried out the feasibility studies and prepared the feasibility report for the Muthukandiya Reservoir project in Monoragal district, which has become a reality and serves the nation today. From 1974 to 1976, he served as a construction engineer at the Vahalkad Reservoir project in Anuradhapura district. In 1976, he got his professional qualifications, MIC London and Chartered Engineer, and subsequently he got the IESL Charter. Sorry. He obtained his MN Science degree in Hydrology from the University of New South Wales, Australia in 1981. From 1983 to 1987, he served as Assistant Director at the Water Management Secretariat of Mahavali Authority of Sri Lanka. Palitha served as a visiting lecturer in Hydrology at University of Moratuwa from 1981 to 1987. He served as a consultant and unit author of Hydrology and Irrigation Engineering at the Open University, Sri Lanka. Also, Palitha worked as a national consultant in water and environmental engineering for the ILO UNDP from 1985 to 1987 in the formation and setting up of the Technical Training Institute at Katunayaka. Palitha has won the Ceylon Development Engineering CDE Award for the best paper published in the Engineer Journal of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka during the period 1984 to 85. He is also a fellow of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka. After migrating to Australia in 1987, he served as hydrologist at the Flood Forecasting Centre of Commonwealth Bureau of Meteorology, Sydney, for 20 years until he retired from service in 2008. And I'm sure we'll be hearing his experiences in Australia as well as in Sri Lanka. I'm sure we are in for a really interesting presentation of his practical use of the knowledge that he gained through engineering education. In a more personal note, actually, I knew Palitha because he was just 1 year senior to me at Pereira. And Prof. Pereira was also the Vice Chancellor when I entered the University of Pereira in 1969. So this is a very satisfying moment for me also to be standing here talking about one of my senior engineers and also the father of engineering education. He used to be a very popular personality in the faculty, and I remember whenever he used to come to the faculty, being Vice Chancellor, he was on the other side of the bridge. But whenever he came to the engineering faculty, everyone was getting excited, and everyone was so happy to see him, and I could see, we could see, as those who have not actually studied under him, the pleasure he was giving to everyone in the faculty, and I'm so glad that his two sons are also here today, and I'm sure we are in for a very interesting talk. Thank you.
Now I kindly invite Engineer Palitha Samarasinghe, Manshanayaka, to deliver today's memorial oration.
Thank you, Niranjani. Engineer Professor Niranjani Ratnayaka, President of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka. Engineer Professor Leelananda Rajapaksa, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Pereira. Members of late Professor E.O.E. Pereira's family, past presidents, council members, ladies and gentlemen. I must mention here that I was very much humbled and felt honored when Lawrence Pereira proposed me to deliver this prestigious Engineer Professor E.O.E. Pereira Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much. I must also thank Engineer Professor Niranjani Ratnayaka, President of IESF, and Engineer Lalit Pallagama, Chairman, Civil Engineering Section Committee of IESF, Engineer Neil Abhisekara, CEO of the IESF, for making all the arrangements necessary. Thank you very much. Professor E.O.E. Pereira. I first saw Professor E.O.E. Pereira first time in my life when I entered the faculty in 1967 as a fresher, as a newcomer, and Professor E.O.E. Pereira welcomed us as the Dean. After that, for my first year and the second year, he was there as the Dean, but I didn't have any opportunity to meet him, nor there was any necessity for it. But Professor Pereira was subsequently, in my third year, he was given a promotion as a Vice Chancellor, and he moved over to the Lodge. Now, but while in the faculty, I have seen him walking around with his pipe on, and and he was a figure. I would say he was a unique figure, and everyone respected him, and we were looking, up for him, like. And this is a photograph I managed to get at. That's Professor Pereira there, Mrs. Pereira. Mrs. Pereira, and that was his car, and the other gentleman here is Professor H.P. De Silva. Then, Professor E.O.E. Pereira has been a good colleague of late Mr. Dudley Senanayake, former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, and they have been together at Cambridge, I understand. And Mr. Dudley Senanayake, while he was the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka from 65 to 70, he requested everyone to grow more paddy and grow more rice, and then I think Professor Pereira took up the challenge, and then there was an open space in front of the workshop and the fluids lab, that area, this side of the design office, and I think there were about 3 acres, and he got it converted to a paddy lot. And one fine day, 600 students, that time we had 150 in the batch, so 4 years is 600 plus the staff, and there were no lectures that day, and we all took part in this paddy transplanting exercise. And among this, one might notice that lady there in the hat happens to be none other than present president, Professor Niranjali Ratnayake. She was a first year student at that time. Then this photograph, probably I was the number 3 there from this end. That happens to be me. Then that was a 3 months crop, and we did the same thing with the harvesting, and you could see Professor Pereira with his pipe supervising the harvesting. Then about the 3rd day, I said he was moved over to the lodge as the Vice Chancellor. This photograph I managed to get with the athletics Gold Cup winners Arunachalam Hall, Professor Pereira facing a photograph. Now that's about the dad, but then let's talk about the son. Lawrence Pereira, when I joined Royal College in 1959 as to the Form 1, that's the grade 6, he was our hero. He was the head prefect, and he captained college cricket. All these I'll come out with. And in this photograph, where Lawrence captained, Lawrence captained the college cricket team. In the same team, we have Brian Pereira. We have Brian over there, the number 3 from this end, playing under Lawrence. Mr. Brian Pereira is here in the crowd with us. This is Lawrence's record. He was the head prefect, captain college cricket, captain Ceylon Schools combined schools cricket, captain college tennis, then won Raga colors, athletics colors. Then later in the early 70s, he captained CCC Colombo Cricket Club, CHNFC, and those of us who have been watching Raga matches, I should say, when Lawrence gets the ball and he has slipped through all the tackles and end up with the touchline with his colleague John Burrows. And Lawrence has been one of the finest sportsmen that Sri Lanka has produced. Besides being a sports icon, he had obtained a master's degree from University of Cambridge. While studying there, Lawrence represented Cambridge University in cricket, and he has played under Mike Brayley, who subsequently captained England. Now, Lawrence, a senior city planner in Melbourne, he was here for the Royal Thomaian in March. Now he has come down from Melbourne, especially for this lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause. Now, my topic today is water resources and hydrological forecasting. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, I'll get some water. Water resources. What is a resource? I like to define resource as something which has a demand. If it has no demand, then I wouldn't call it a resource. If I may give you an example, Sri Lanka is surrounded by sea, and we have sea sand all around, but until recently sea sand has no demand. But I would say river sand, it has a huge demand for housing. So sea sand, I wouldn't call it a resource, but river sand, I'll call it a resource. On that, water has a huge demand for human consumption. So it could be this severe demand for water, maybe for domestic, municipal, irrigation, agriculture, hydropower, industrial, the list goes on and on. And how do we, now demand could be characterized by different ways. One such thing is the quantity per unit time. If I may say, irrigation department, irrigation reservoir, there are so much 15,000 acres under cultivation. One may need so many thousand acre feet per month. Or if some water supply scheme is catering for a township, we may need so many million gallons per month or whatever. But another way of characterizing demand would be quality. There's a demand for quality water. Quality could be, when you say quality, it has to be within specific limits. Limits could be in the form of parts per million, ppm, turbidity, chlorination, biological activity, all this. And then there's a demand for timing. If I may give you an example, or irrigation, if there's rain in the paddy plots, you don't need irrigation water. But if it was dry, there's a demand. So the demand is time related. And then reliability, there's a demand for good reliable source of water. Spatial location, the water is in the reservoir here, but it's needed on the 16th floor of a building. The demand is spatial location difference. I'll talk about it. Now the supply of water is through natural hydrologic cycle. So that we all know from small days, there's the ocean, the evaporation taking place, and the ice condensed, and the cloud precipitation taking place. So eventually all these percolations, and the cycle goes on. Now, to match the demand with supply, water engineers have to do it by way of water resources systems, comprising of dams, reservoirs, water treatment plants, channels, aqueducts, tunnels, troughs, all these, and pumping stations. I was talking quantity per unit time, the demand for quantity. The dams and reservoirs could handle it, store it in the reservoir, release it as and when it's needed. Water, I said I was talking about quality. Quality water treatment plants will look after that. I was talking about spatial location. These ones, canals, aqueducts, all these will look after the change of spatial location. Pump, I said, if water is needed in upstairs 16th floor, pumping stations will look after that. Now, demand for water is matched with the natural supply. How to do it with the least cost? Engineers will have to solve the problem. Now, this is Professor H.R. Valentine, 1967, Water in the Service of Man, Penguin book. I'm just trying to quote from there. So and incidentally, Professor Valentine was the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering in the University of New South Wales when I was studying there in 79-80. But now, out of the total surface area of Earth, 3/4 of it is water, and evaporations are continuing. About 70% of the water falling on the land surface returns to the atmosphere from lakes, reservoirs, etc. So hydrologic cycle, in the hydrologic cycle, there are some processes which will take much longer delays, like century or two, getting locked up in the form of polar ice and glaciers. Now a bit of some facts, 97% of the world's water is seawater. Only 3% remains as fresh water. Even of this fresh water, 75% of it is more or less locked up as polar ice and glaciers. The balance 25% in the groundwater. This is another thing. 1/3,000 of fresh water is found in the lakes. That's basically the Great Lakes. 300. 3,000 is in the form of rivers of the world, and another similar amount in the form of water vapor and in the atmosphere. Now, that's general. But water resources, getting on to water resources of Australia. Australia's positioning in the world map has been vital. Why do I say that? Good portion of the Australia is within the band of 20 to 30 degree latitude south. If I may explain that, that's the world map, and that's the equator with latitude 0, and the Tropic of Capricorn that's latitude 23.5, and Tropic of Cancer, latitude 23.5 north. These yellow patches are the deserts of the world, of which I should say number 5 is Sahara Desert, number 3 is Atacama, number 10 is Kalahari Desert, all that. So what I'm trying to stress is, of the world map, the landmass of Australia is major portion, that's 23.5 I said, so 20 is somewhere here, 30 is somewhere here, so that 20 and 30 band, whether it is southern hemisphere or northern hemisphere, is the dry belt, So for whatever the reason, Australia's landmass is within that. When we are studying hydrological processes, one of the very first assignments given to us was to write an essay about the water resources potential of Australia, had it been shifted little up or down in the world map. Meaning, excuse me, on that. Meaning, had it been shifted little up, more close to the equator, it could have experienced a lot of rain, and things would have been quite different. Had it been shifted down south beyond that 20-30 band, it would have accommodated a lot of rain. But for some reason, this was within this, and there have been serious repercussions. I'll tell you what the repercussions are. Talking about geography of Australia, that black line is the Great Dividing Range, a mountain range coming from top of Australia, past Townsville, Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne. That's a mountain range. Now, this is a map of Australia showing the deserts of the world, deserts of Australia, like Great Simpson Desert, Simpson is here, Great Victoria Desert, Gibson Desert, all these. The brown color shows the dryness. All this is because of that positioning. I'll talk about it further. This is the map of Australia showing the rivers of the world. That's the Great Dividing Range, the black line. The rivers moving, traveling in the eastward direction, those ones are more like the Sri Lankan rivers. Why I say this is, after water falling on the ground, within a matter of 5-6 days, water, or within a week, water is out there in the sea. And in the same case with this, the rivers originating from that black line there, flowing northwards, they are again a bit on the same, like the reservoirs here, the rivers here. But the rivers moving in the westward direction, say that's Charleville, the Kalgova River, that becomes a tributary of Darling River. And then there are so many other rivers like Castle, Macquarie, all these are tributaries of Darling, and Darling River goes past Walgett, Burke, Louth, Tilpa, all these. Those are the prediction points which we predict, we give weather for the flood predictions to. And then this line here, that one, this one, the little brownish colored one, that's Murray River originating from Mount Kosciuszko, and that joins the Darling coming from north around in a place called Mildura in New South Wales. That's New South Wales. And then it flows through South Australia, reaches the sea somewhere close to Adelaide. And for a flood wave originating from a storm somewhere there in Queensland, it will take about good 3 months to traverse through the distance. So we in New South Wales, that the Sydney office is issuing warnings to New South Wales. We have been issuing warnings, just the storm is gone, storm started from there so many weeks earlier, and we are issuing flood warnings right through for it to traverse through. right? It will be a bit funny because no rain at all, and even we could predict so many weeks ahead of now flood wave is still there. We can do predictions here. You're going to get the flood on such and such after so many weeks here in each of these towns. Now, the serious repercussions of this 2030 ban is this one. This is this white colored thing. This is the population density of Australia, and this white colored thing is the lowest one here. That means less than 0.1 person per square kilometer. Believe me or not, it is less than this whole area of Australia is population density is less than 0.1, and the darker yellow one, those spots here, is the second from here. That's population density from 0.1 to 1 person per square kilometer. So, right, it's that is because there is no water and and if I give you the figures, that's the area of Australia is 7.69 million square kilometers. Area of Sri Lanka is 65,000. Area of Tasmania is 68,000. Tassie is bigger than Sri Lanka. Tassie is that one. Sorry, Tasmania is that one, that little island there. Now, population of Australia is 24,000. Population of Sri Lanka is 21 million. Population of Tasmania is 515,000. And if you work out the population density, this shows, believe it or not, 3 people per square kilometer in Australia. Population density of Sri Lanka is 323 people per square kilometer. Tassie is 7.5 people. So all this is because that had Australia been shifted little up, it could have accommodated a lot of people, lot of rain, lot of people, and a good use of it. But it's to me it looks like a colossal waste of land, if I may say so. Now, getting on to about Sri Lanka, rainfall map of Sri Lanka, it's subject to the Maha and Nyala, the northeast monsoon, and then the southwest monsoon. When we were small, we were taught the dry zone, wet zone demarcation is 75 inches annual. But now, of course, they have made it to 3 zones like dry zone, intermediate zone, wet zone. Now, this is the annual rainfall map of Sri Lanka, and that one is the dark blue. That patch there shows 5,000 millimeters annual or higher. And that one in Hambantota and Putlam area, that's less than 1,000 millimeters. That's 40 inches annual. Now, that's the map of river basins of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has 103 river basins starting from Central Hill Country, and starting from Kalniganga, with the Kalniganga is basin number 1. You would see that basin number 1, basin number, and it falls into the sea around Colombo, as we know. And then there's Kaluganga fall into the sea around Kalutara. There is the Walaveganga fall into the sea around Ambalang Tota. There's Manikganga going through Kataragama. There's Kumbukanoe going through Yala and Kumana. And then Galloya reaching sea around Bati area. Then there is Mahaveliganga, which falls to the sea around Trinco. That's basin number 60. And from about 50 onwards, all these coming up to 103 is the Attanagaloya basin number 103, which falls to the sea around Nigambu. Now, I should say from about 50 up, going through all these up to about Daduroya, somewhere here, all these rivers are operating only during the Maha season, that is from northeast monsoon like October to December. All these rivers are not perennial, it's only operating for the 3 months, October to December. And I would like to just say this for your information, you all may know this. When we go to Nuwara, we go past a town called Ginigathena. Ginigathena is located on a hillock or a mountain top, and it has catchments like Kalniganga, and there is a particular station, the old police station of Ginigathena. Probably you may know, the rain falling on one part of the roof of the police station, that belonging to Kalniganga basin, the water will reach Colombo, and just 5 feet away, water falling on the other part of the roof that coming under Mahavalley would reach Trinco. So I thought it's interesting. This is what it is. Sri Lanka has 103 river basins. Kalniganga basin number 1, Mahavalley basin number 60, Athenagalu basin number 103. Now, hydrology branch of irrigation department was started in 1944 by a gentleman called Shirley Box. He is a Sri Lankan burgher, and he is considered the first hydrologist in Sri Lanka. He is a maths tripos guy, supposed to be a brilliant mathematician. He organized the branch very well. Thanks to him, Sri Lanka has river flow records for 71 stations all around Sri Lanka from 1944 onwards. Incidentally, talking about Australia, the very first irrigation scheme was Marambiji irrigation scheme in New South Wales. It was started in 1912, so we have records from 1912 in Australia. As I said, eastern flowing rivers are more similar to Sri Lankan rivers, and the western flowing ones were different because it takes a lot of time. I said 3 months for a flood wave to traverse all this distance. Now, I like to draw your attention to this Prince Vijaya's visit to Thammanna. Now, Prince Vijaya became King Vijaya subsequently. We all know that King Vijaya reigns in Sri Lanka from around this time, 543 to 505 BC. Now, the story goes, Prince Vijaya came with 700 people in boats, and he came and landed in Thammanna. And then they were thirsty for water, and all these people have gone interior, and Vijay has said, if you find a water source, come and let me know, I also need. He waited, as the story goes, no one returned, so he himself went inside looking for water. Then there he found a lake, that beside which he found a queen, tribal queen, beautiful queen, called Kueni. And then he has started an affair, and the story goes like that. But my interest is about the lake, and this lake is not a natural lake but a man-made lake. This was the view of late Mr. H.D.S. Manamperi, former Director Irrigation and Chairman Mahavalley. Now, Mr. Manamperi believed this is a man-made lake, not a natural lake. So I thought of investigating it myself. How did I do it? That's a map of Sri Lanka. That's Putlam. That's Putlam there. Beside, just close to that, we have Thabova reservoir, and in that we measure daily evaporations. And then we have the Mana there. So Mana, close to that we have the Giant's Tank, the Yoda Well, and there we do measurements of evaporations. And Thammanna is more close to Mana area. I believe Thammanna beach is somewhere close to Mana there. Now, this is the rainfall and evaporation measurements of Thabova in Putlam, and what we measure is pan evaporation data. Now, pan evaporation, we can't just measure it. We have to follow the WMO standards, World Meteorological Organization. It should be 1 meter wide, 10 inches of water, blah, blah, all this. So these are the measured figures. Of these figures, now pan evaporation is different to natural lake evaporation. Lake evaporation, we have to estimate it using these figures. So what I'm not going into it, but the estimate, what is important is estimated lake evaporation figures are these, and those when totaled up to 160. the average monthly rainfall of Puttalam is this. That comes to annually 1110. So you will notice this is higher, the lake evaporations are higher than the rainfall. And this one here, average number of rainy days during each month, these April and May, the 1010 is showing the signs of effects of southwest monsoon. And here 13, 18, 13, from October to December, that shows the signs of the effects of northeast monsoon. Now, this is very much interesting. The same data corresponding to Giant's Tank in Mannar, which is more close to the Thammanna. So, sorry. This one, the estimated lake evaporations are these, totaling up to 1305. Lake evaporation, annual evaporation is 1305. Average month, the total annual is 967, and this 11, 17, 13 effect of only northeast monsoon. Southwest has no effect. Now, if we go through the figures, month of February, lake evaporation is 94, rain is only 34. This one, May 116 is being evaporated, rainfall is 49. Month of June 134 and 5. Month of July 126 and 7. Like that. Month of September, evaporation is 120 millimeters, rainfall is only 24. So this shows that for them to survive in this locality, the Quenese tribe, the Yakshasa tribe who lived there, they would have had a very good knowledge of water conservation techniques to survive with 3 months rain for the rest of the 9 months. That's what I'm trying to say. Annual evaporations is much more than the annual rain. The northeast monsoon rain is available only for 3 months of the year. Rest of the year is mostly dry. So the Quenese Yakshasa tribe, to survive or exist in the locality, they should have had a sound knowledge of conservation techniques. So I believe Mr. Manamperi's view is correct. Continuing further with water conservation techniques of the Yakshasa tribe, after about 500 years, the Sri Lankan farmers developed a Katasorowa, which is available even today in rural Sri Lanka. It is believed to be a Sri Lankan invention, a masterpiece of invention. I'll tell you why. This is a photograph of Katasorowa, or vertical tower sluice, VT. This is the tank 1, and underneath there's a horizontal clay pipe continuing, you can't see it. That will lead to the channel, and then that through the channel to the paddy lots. And this end is connected to what they call the catay. Catay is just a little cylinder of 1 foot or 1.5 feet length. And that catay is there, and when the water level rises, you add another catay to it, and then like that. And this is how it is. And if water is filled up to that, and as water water level lowers, you remove the topmost catay, then it will spill through and reach. So this is a masterpiece of invention. This was done by the Sri Lankans. But in recent times, Sri Lanka was, the British took control of Sri Lanka in 1815. After that, I think they would have seen, while roaming around Sri Lanka, they would have seen this Katasorowa, and they named it in the recent times as Morning Glory Spilkum Sluice. But it is our Katasorowa. Katasorowa in the rural tanks could only be operated for low heads, like maximum 7 to 10 feet, a human for it to add. Otherwise, after that, for high heads, it cannot be operated. For high heads, subsequently, our fellows developed this. They invented the tower sluice. They invented the tower sluice for high heads operating, say, 30 feet or so. And this invention was done during King Vasaba's time. King Vasaba's period was this Anuradhapura period, 67 to 111 AD. Now, Bisokotua is considered an engineering marvel by the Sri Lankans. That's a rough sketch of the Bisokotua. The reservoir is there, and there should be a gate to operate the inflows, gate to operate the outflows. Now, this is Maduroya old sluice, a picture of it, and you will notice it's a double barrel sluice. Now, this is Wahalkadawava sluice, which we constructed around in 1973-74 period. I had my charter training there, and this is Wahalkada. Wahalkada, if I may tell you, you may wonder where Wahalkada is. Wahalkada is located 50 miles from Anuradhapura, 30 from Medavachiya, 30 from Vaunia, 17 from Pulmunde Beach. Now, this has been built by King Mahasena 1500 years ago, I guess, and by damming Tavalang Halmilab Oya, which is a tributary of Yanoya, and it had worked well like any other ancient irrigation valve, but owing to some major flood, there have been a breach, and the breach is we did the breach closure. Breach would have been only 300 meters or something. So what irrigation department did was we did the breach filling, but the rest of the dam, rest of the bund runs to about 5-6 miles. So once the reservoir is impounded, water filled up, the king's soil mechanics, if I may say, the soil mechanics of the king during king's time, whatever techniques they use, that is under threat, because it could, any portion with poor quality could give in, right? So, and if I may add about irrigation department, it was started in 1900 by the British under a subunit of PWD, and towards the mid 1900s it was made a major department, and all what irrigation department did over the years was restoration of major tanks, breach major tanks like Parakram Samudra, Kaudul, Parakram Samudra, Kalavava, you name it. If there was a breach, they did only the breach closure. Nachadua, Kantale, whatever. All that is breach closure is only 300 meters, 60 feet tall, 300 feet. The rest of the bund is King's Bund, right? So our fellows, the Sri Lankans, when I say our fellows, the ancient irrigation builders, irrigation engineers, if I may call them, they have had a good knowledge of what they were doing. Now, talking about Wahalkada, this is the location of a sluice. Now, as you know, there's a subtle judgment involved in locating a sluice. How do we locate a sluice? Sluice, it's to provide water under gravity. So that means it has to be the highest point of the irrigation area, because it has to flow under gravity. At the same time, it has to be the lowest point of the tank bed area, because in order to minimize the dead storage is useless. So it has to be in one argument, it has to be the highest point of the irrigable area. Other argument, it has to be the lowest point of the tank bed area. So to do that, we have contour maps these days, contour survey maps. So our fellows do it, irrigation department, they do it. And when they located the sluice site, and these are all thick jungle because of that earlier breach, the King's reservoir becomes non-effective or non-functional. So it's all jungle, thick jungle. And when our fellows decided this is where the location sluice is going to be held, and when the irrigation department people dug up, they found remnants of the old sluice. They found the remnants of the old sluice. Now, same thing is with Maduroya when MDB when they started their Maduroya development, they preserved this. Likewise, we also had this one, the remnants there. Now this was the start of the sluice. That's the other end of the sluice, me standing there. Then this is a picture of Parakkapasamudra sluice outlet. I'll be talking about Parakkapasamudra a little later for you to give a picture understanding. This you could see when you go to Polonnaruwa. This is just beside Polonnaruwa rest house, which is located on the bank of Parakkapasamudra. Now, getting on to flood forecasting, how it all started in Australia is there 1955. There was a flood, record flooding with 465 millimeters of rain in 3 days, 14 lives lost, 1,800 people rescued, 5,002 homes flooded, all this. And that flood eventually led to the development of formal flood warnings by the Bureau right across Australia. Now, I'd like to talk about the components of flood warning system. The main component, I believe, is the prediction of heights by the hydrologists of the Bureau, and based on their modeling, hydrologic modeling, based on rainfall data, all this. Now, once we Bureau of Meteorology flood section gives, say, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the flood level is going to be, water level in the town gauge is going to be 5.4 meters. Whether right or wrong, that's what the Bureau is saying. That's what we are saying. Once we say that, it's being interpreted by the State Emergency Service, SCS. Those guys go lateral. We only give the vertical height. They go horizontally and say, if the Weather Bureau is saying water is reaching 10 o'clock tomorrow, 10 a.m. this March, then Arthur Street will be underwater, Stanley Street will be underwater, and half of John Street will be underwater. And the evacuations are needed. Then they'll prepare warning message, construct the warning messages, New South Wales State Emergency Service, and then they have to do the communications, and they have to put it across to the public by way of local radio, leaflets, dropping leaflets, door knocking, that's a last resort, and say, look here, flood is coming, you have to evacuate. And then the public will have to respond to that request. People are reluctant, Aboriginal people, they don't care, they want to stay, and they are sometimes fairly drunk and, all this, but whatever it is, public response have to be done. And then at the end of the flood, we have a review. That's the report card of the flood. How each of those people, whether it is flood warning, height correction, whether we did it right, then the interpretation, were there any lapses, all this. Post-mortem will be held with the stakeholders. Now, this is a photograph of Hunter River in Maitland. I'll tell you what Hunter River is. Catchment area of Hunter is 21,000 square kilometers. A total area of Sri Lanka is 65,000, and Hunter, this is about 1/3 Sri Lanka. 1/3 Sri Lanka coming in the form of a catchment, all that 1/3 Sri Lanka area coming in the form of a catchment, coming down as a flood. And then think this is a minor flood level of 6.1 meters. There's in between moderate flood level, I have not marked. The red one is the major flood level, 9.7. This is the flood of 1955, the 12.3 meter, and the peak one is probable maximum flood. That's, I'll say, probable maximum flood is a PMF. This is an estimate of it's estimated to be 1 in 15,000 years. PMF is defined as theoretically the largest flood resulting from a combination of most severe meteorological and hydrological conditions that could conceivably occur in the given area. Now, we could say 1 in 15,000. Public, they haven't got a clue what we are talking of. In Glenbourne Dam in New South Wales, people had, when they were living beneath the dam, they were having nightmares saying, oh my God, if the dam breaks, our lives are in danger. So what the people did there was to say, if someone is walking down, if someone is walking down pavement, and the chances of driver losing control and hitting the passenger or person walking down has been calculated to be 1 in 700. It's a probability, 1 in 700. Now, that's a rare event, driver losing control and hitting somebody passing by, 1 in 700 chance. Now, for that PMF, it's 1 in 15,000. For easy calculation, we call it 1 in 14,000. That means this is 1 in 700. So 20 times rarer than somebody losing control and hitting a passenger. So these are some of the hydrological concepts. That's all. I thought I'll just make mention of it. Now coming back to flood forecasting in New South Wales, as I said, eastern flowing catchments, we use rainfall runoff models for coastal catchments, and western ones, because it's taking longer time, peak height relationship generally suffice. Now, 3-hourly rainfall modeling, rainfall modeling, 3-hourly rainfall and river flow data are essential. Why do I say that? 1 hourly you can say, but 1 hourly when you are doing it practically, there's no breathing space, because by the time we prepare the warning, 1 hour is gone. So 3-hourly, if we have been doing it in New South Wales, we prepare a warning once in 3 hours and issue it. And there's enough time, practical, it's very good. But practically there were general difficulties we were facing, that is especially to get the river flow data. That is because New South Wales, we used to appoint a reader and beside the gauge, and we tell them, look here, go to the river and give us the 9 AM reading, 12 noon, 3 PM, 6 PM. So he gives us a call and we jot it down, and we make payments for his call as well as payment reading wise. But practically we can't ask him to go to the river, hold a torch at 9 PM, midnight and 3 AM. So impossible. So impossible. So those are the practical problems. And I experienced importance of 3-hourly data for Parakra Samudra floods in 1978. I thought you will be interested to know it. This is an interesting experience I have had. That was in a month of June in 1978. This is Parakra Samudra Band, and that day Lake House Daily News first page photograph by the Lake House photographer taking a helicopter shot about Parakra Samudra. Water was, that's the riprap. As you know, the boulders, this is called the riprap. Riprap is there to break the waves. And so that particular day water was up to that much, and because of the wind, the water was going over the bund, and it was going over the bund. And for Parakra Samudra also, this has this bund, the King's Bund, running for a good many miles, and you could see in that shot white waves going over in white color in many places for miles. So it was a serious situation, and we were sent from head office hydrology to Polonnaruwa. Mr. ADS Gunawardana, all of us, most of us know, ADS was the IE Polonnaruwa that time, and GA Polonnaruwa was Austin Fernando. He was the President's Secretary till recent time. So he was there and we were there, and the predictions were to Parakra, that area, heavy overnight rainfall was predicted. So Parakra Samudra has 25 square miles catchment. It has Mahavali waters coming as well. Those of course we stopped. So but we have no control of how much rain was to come, overnight. Then and under the situation was Parakra Samudra had, that was Yala season, 18,000 acres under cultivation. People, the crop has gone, farmers have gone halfway of the crop, and now our biggest concern was incoming flood. I'll tell you, this is a sketch. Parakra Samudra, that's the it's an earthen bund. FSL is the full capacity, full supply level we call it, that's full capacity. Then when a flood is coming, all the irrigation department or Mahavali or wherever, we design a spillway to pass a 1 in 100-year flood. 1 in 100-year flood. When a 1 in 100-year flood passes through the spillway, there will be a flood lift. That lift is that difference of high flood level and flood FSL is that flood lift. So with that 100-year corresponding to the 1 in 100-year, we could decide what the high flood level is going to be. That's the bund top level, BTL. The difference between bund top level and HFL is the freeboard. Freeboard is generally left there for the floods, for the waves. So waves come and hit in the thing. That's what the riprap is there for, to break the waves. So so that day Parakra Samudra had water up to about halfway of riprap, and because of the waves due to wind, it was overtopping. So that was the case. So we didn't, and there was 18,000 acres under cultivation. So best way to save the bund, and mind you, the King's Bund running for miles, and what the British did, Parakra Samudra breach closure is only few hundred meters. That the soil mechanics we know. Soil mechanics, you know, for those of you, soil mechanics. Now when we did the Wahalkada breach, I think I should mention this. We have the soil testers of the irrigation department. Those guys go and do borrow area surveys. That is they go there to select the proper clay. You need the proper clay for the core trench and all that. So from the borrow area, once they have decided the proper clay is there, from there we come with bulldozers. You come and dump it, and then we have to tamp it. Mere tamping won't do. You have to add water and tamp it, and that these guys and we do it by, and then so many roller passes with sheep foot rollers, and then the modern day soil mechanics, we go for the maximum dry density, adding water, and water addition is for corresponding to the maximum dry density is the optimum moisture content by drawing a curve where the peak goes. So soil testers do in situ measurements and see, and then arrive at that. That's a modern present day soil mechanics. But we don't know the kings during the time of the king, how the soil mechanics they did. They have identified the correct clay, and then they have tamped it by no sheep foot rollers. They would have done it with cattle and elephants, I believe, and they have compacted it, right? They have compacted it, and it had stood up to now, all these reservoirs. So now what we thought, coming back to this, we don't know, to save the flood, one option is to get the bulldozers and break it near the sluice site or the spillway site, because there's a spillway, there's a spill tail channel already constructed. So sluice, we have the channels. Your water will pass through the channels for that, bringing the least damage. But if it breaks at an unwanted point of the King's Bund, running for miles, then it is headed. Say it may be Kaduruela or wherever where the homesteads are, and disaster. So we don't know King's soil mechanics. We trust it, and if we break the bund near the sluice site or dam site, we could have got over the flood and saved the bund. But so we decided, till on this bund we were there, we discussing what to do, and then in the night, 10 p.m. all dark, we don't know how much rain was coming. We decided we'll leave all the radial gates open, sluice gates open. It was around 10 o'clock. And following morning when we came, this was the story. King's Bund of Parakrama Samudra stood firm withstanding the flood. Quality of the earth bund was very good. Full credit to King Parakram Bahu and his men. They have done a wonderful job. But a different engineering phenomenon was evident. What was it? Owing to sudden drawdown of the water table, slip circle failures have occurred along the bund. I'll explain. This is that's the bund, and water was up to somewhere there, and the waves were going, and this whole area was fully soaked with water. And as you know, in soil mechanics, that water, they can't sustain it. That's why the slip circles occur, and it was slumped in many places along the miles of Parakramsamudra Bund. This happened in 1978 in Polonnaruwa in Sri Lanka. This could have happened in New South Wales or Victoria because we don't know what's happening. In the 3 hourly rains were not there, right? And then for the solution, the automation of rainfall and automation was necessary. It came in the form of telephone telemetry. Hydromaze is the trade name. This came to Australia in 1985. That's me standing there in beside a rain gauge around 30 years back. This is a automatic rainfall recorder hooked up to a telephone line, and this is in Hunter Valley. And what we do is, this is counting the number of tips, and then we do another, we get the office to dial this telephone here, get the reading, subtract it from the 3 hourly earlier reading, and then it gives how much of rainfall has occurred in this place in the last 3 hours. So that's how we do it. But that is rain. River case is still worse, because river, as you know, water flows in the downmost point. So to hook up a telephone in the catchment, it's costly to have a telephone line. So, but we managed in the around 85. Then around 1989, we have the automation, the technology in radio telemetry. So in radio telemetry, you don't need to pull wire, draw telephone lines. It's how the radio works. So that is an alert is the trade name. This is an American product which came to Australia around 89. We started installing them. Alert stands for automatic local evaluation in real time. And when that's a rain gauge, we call it alert tree rain. When there's 1 millimeter of rain fallen onto that, the automatic rainfall recorder is there. That will send a signal through the antenna to the base station, and from there to our office. Now that's the rain. River is, as you know, I said river, the water is flowing at the downmost point. To that, from there, when there's a 1 centimeter of river rise or fall, it will send a signal to a repeater station here, because the water is at the valley bottom. So we have to have a repeater in the closest mountain range. So this sends a signal like that from the antenna, and it's picked up by the repeater, sent through the base station and to our office in Sydney. Now I'd like to have just to mention the difference between real-time flood forecasting and DESI flood estimation. Now real-time flood forecasting is this excuse me for this real-time flood forecasting. The antecedent conditions are very predominant. Why do I say that? Antecedent conditions is like, for a catchment, if it was dry for the last so many months, and if 75 millimeters of rain catchment wide falls, still it may not produce anything, because the soil was dry, it was getting soaked in. But if it was raining for the last 3 days and 75 millimeters of rain falling, it could produce a major flood. That's the difference. That is the importance of antecedent conditions. They call it antecedent wetness of the soil. Design situation is completely different case. Design is like 1 in 100 year flood, 1 in 200. Those are statistical things. You fit onto a distribution and say read what it was and say 1 in 100 year flood is amounted to this much. Those are on ideal conditions. So now for catchment modeling, I'll just run through it quickly. That's the catchment map, and that's the border of the catchment. That's the river network. And in this, the important factors are depending on the inbuilt catchment characteristics. There is the slope of the catchment is important. The soil type, whether it is sandy soil or clayey soil. Clayey soil, between the two clay particles, that's cavity, this space, there's water being retained. That for the water to get expelled, it would take months or years. Whereas in the case of sandy soil, there is cohesionless. So between two particles, two sand particles, there's no cohesion. You could experience this if you go to the beach and the wave comes. As the wave goes back, you feel the settlement. That is, there is no water being restored, kept between the sand particles. So all these, whether it is how much percentage of sandy soil, clay soil, or mixture of two, all that will also matter in the catchment modeling. There's type of vegetation do matter. Stream network, geomorphological aspects, all that. And then that's the catchment property. And then the rainfall input. For the rainfall input, again, there are different characteristics like intensity of rainfall, how intense the rain is, and how many millimeters per hour, and say duration of rain, how long it was there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever, and then frequency, how many such occurred during the lapse of whatever time considered, and there's a spatial location distribution. The heavy rain was in the upstream or downstream. All that will matter in the output runoff. Runoff this is our important thing, where it's a graph of discharge against time, and this graph is called hydrograph. So I thought for this is interesting, and I want to bring it as an analogy, where that's a human, and that guy again, like this inbuilt catchment characteristics, this guy has nature of the person, whether he's arrogant or otherwise, general physique, whether he could handle a lot of drinks, that property is there. And this one, rainfall inputs, similar, we have depending on the alcohol input, amount of drinks he consumed, type of drink, cider, beer or whatever, and then duration, how many hours he have been drinking, the intensity of drinking, how many schooners per hour, whatever, and that all matters to his behavior. One could say, when once this guy is every party he's drunk, he's making this. So I thought to give a simple comparison, that's catchment modeling. That's the catchment and rainfall input. That's the human, that person with drinks. I think there is a similarity. So the hydrological flood forecasting, we have rainfall input, output runoff. It's considered whatever the mathematical formulation you adopt, it's a black box. And we have rainfall runoff models. They are calibrated to past flood events, data of the past flood events. And there are numerous rainfall models that have been developed and are in operation. Now, I said the report card. Once you handle a flood, this is the report card. This is a flood I handled in 2005 for Wilson's River at Lismore. It's up north, about 700 miles, 700 kilometers from Sydney, Brisbane Way. And this is the report card, and all these histograms are the annual average rainfall, catchment rainfall, right? And then this is, if you consider this, that's 1500 hours, 1800 hours. So I have issued that flood warning. This is the rainfall. The light blue ones are the QPF, quantitative precipitation forecast. That's we don't need it, but it's how much. That's giving us, the operator, how much if the rainfall, existing rainfall increased by another 25%, 125, then you know, if rain is increasing, we can lift up the prediction. So, but anyway, whatever it is, here it is, that's that, and this curve is the river level, and that's how. And that particular day, I have issued, and these bullet points are the flood warnings we issue, and that's the time. That's at 14:30, that's 1500. So 16:30, 4:30 p.m. we issued it, and that time water level was of the river was 2.2, and we said it will reach reservoir water level would reach minor flood level of 4.2 by midnight, but it reached at 10 p.m. it reached. So it is a wrong prediction. Why did we go wrong? We have to analyze. That is because I issued the warning at 4:30 p.m. and then 6 p.m. 1800 reading, where there was widespread catchment rain of 35 millimeters. That histogram, this one there, that bumped up. That one there, 35 millimeters of rain occurred after issuing the flood warning. So that's inevitable. We have no control. And then that raised the river to reach 4.2 2 hours earlier instead of midnight, 2 hours earlier. But we got it right in the other ones. That's, I said, that's 4:30 p.m. we issued, and we said river level will reach 7.2 moderate flood level by 7 a.m. the following day. 7 a.m. Yeah, 6 p.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. That came spot on. And we further said water level will keep on rising to 9 meters and it will be reached following day, midday, 12 noon. It came right. Now, this is a difficult thing. We are modeling nature, but we have got to do it. We have to give the public enough time to take their stuff and plan out whatever, because their house and all these properties getting underwater. Think of some big valley with thousands of sheep and cattle, and you know, if a flood is coming and to a certain height, they have to evacuate. Bring state emergency service will be very active, shifting them to high ground, trucks, everything. So, and if we say this height, and if it doesn't come to that height, if it falls within less than 1 foot, then we are in trouble. If we say this, and if water level goes up, then worse. So we have been doing it for the past 20 years. This is the report card. This is the report card. And a few years ago, Hydrology Symposium in Australia, they were saying, which is more important, a good hydrological model, good data, or operating hydrologist. So they concluded it is operating hydrologist, because even though the models are calibrated for previous events, tomorrow's event could be completely different from them. And data could play up. We may not get data in real time, but a good operator may be able to do the needful. Now, coming back to Sri Lanka, flooding in Sri Lanka, these are the catchments which are generally being flooded: Kalniganga, Kaluganga, Gingaga, and Nilwala. Now, Sri Lanka, in those catchments, the residents of these valleys, they deserve a better service. Certainly, they deserve a better service, because the other day I was listening over the radio, and those guys say Gingaga at Badagama is showing a rising trend. Is showing a rising trend. For you a trend, you don't need a hydrologist. You only, if you know the past few readings and the present reading, it's showing a rising trend. But we need to provide flood warnings with river height forecast and timing. We may be putting our neck out by saying tomorrow water level is coming here. If it doesn't come, we are wrong. But then people have enough time to pack their things, and that is the service these valleys, the residents, they need it. So we have got to do it. Resource personnel to handle the flood forecasting. Plenty of hydrologists, qualified hydrologists are available in irrigation department. Rainfall runoff modeling needed for flood forecasting. quite a number of models have been developed. Sorry. Automation of rainfall and river flow data, are they in place? This needs to be checked up. Telephone telemetry and radio telemetry, if so, to what degree are they equipped with? This needs to be checked up. But more importantly, the establishment of a separate dedicated unit for flood forecasting under the Ministry of Disaster Management. This should be given priority as a national service, because Irrigation Department Hydrology Branch has been working from 1944, supplying for the needs of Irrigation Department, that's spillway capacities and flood frequencies. But there should be a dedicated set of forecasters working on the floods, and those hydrologists will have to get hands-on experience, or each of those catchments will have their own characteristic behavior. If I may say, a good GP, general practitioner, a good family doctor would know this patient, though the pressure is high, he is not a pressure patient. So the high pressure may be due to some other thing. Likewise, each of the, because we are not in nature, so each of these, the particular forecasters dedicated, the first thing they may not get it right, but with hands-on experience, they'll be there. So to conclude, I'd like to say the people in these valleys, they deserve a better service. They have to give quantitative forecast and the timing. Now getting on to Professor Pereira. When I met Lawrence in March in Singapore, I happened to mention that we entered the Faculty of Engineering in 1967, and we are celebrating 50 years after that event of entry, 50 years after, and most of our batchmates were to come to assemble in Singapore. Then Lawrence wanted me to pass a message to my batchmates. He said, my father would have remained poor financially, but he invested on people, and you all are the proud products of that investment, which is really true. And looking at the audience here, most of us are the proud products of Professor E.O.E. Pereira. So thank you very much for all you have done for engineering education of Sri Lanka. But now, Professor Pereira, my last recollection of him was in 1969. I remember the exact date, 31st December 1969. Next day was January 1st. We were in Hilda Obesekra Hall, third years, and we had a funny set of fellows, and those guys wanted to do something funny. They went up to Peradeniya Junction, hired a bullock cart tied with two big bulls, you know, horns, all that. So they brought it to Hilda Obesekra, and then we had 2 or 3 guitars, a dole and some set of drums, a few mouth organs. That was enough. And our fellows rang the girls' halls, Sangamita, Ramanathan and Vijayawardhan, and we said we are coming to give a sing-song at your doorstep. And they said, okay, we'll prepare tea for you guys. Okay. Then we started with Ramanathan, Sangamita, final was Vijayawardhan, and we had the sing-song. And the final song was Jyotipala's Kiri Itireva Navasare, because the following day is New Year. Kiri Itireva Navasare, and as the words go, Same Pritiye Raudidi Dasate Kiri Itireva Navasare. All that was good fun. Then we were coming, the bullock cart was coming back to Hilda. The straight stretch between Alvis Pond and Arts Theatre, straight stretch. Suddenly we saw Professor E.O.E. Pereira, Vice Chancellor's Benz. He was going the other way, going past us. He had parked his car, and he was waiting. We thought bad form. Don't know how the Vice Chancellor would take it up, It may be unlawful assembly, possession without permission, all that. But however, we have to settle the higher charges of the bullock cart hire. We didn't have money. We were going for hat collection, and one of these arts faculty boys held the hat to the vice chancellor. You know what he did? He put the shutter down, pulled out his wallet, dropped 50 bucks. We were thrilled. We surrounded him, started singing, "He's a jolly good fellow, hip hip hurrah." So that was my last recollection of Professor E.O.E. Pereira. And yeah, and then this one. This is a great institution, Faculty of Engineering, Pereira. This would stand tall for generations, and it will be a monument to remember late Professor E.O.E. Pereira. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Panchanayaka, for your broad insight into irrigation. I'm sure there are many irrigation engineers gathered here to witness it. And also the amazing technology our ancestors had on irrigation and water management. Now I invite President IESL to present a token of appreciation to Engineer Panchanayaka. Now we are slightly moving away from our protocols. I invite Mr. Lawrence Pereira, son of Professor E.O.E. Pereira, to share a few words about his father.
This is very emotional for me. Very difficult to talk to you today. I hope I talk some sense. Engineer, Professor Ranjan Ratnakar. I learned so much about my father listening to you today. Thank you so much. And Engineer Palita, I learned so much about myself listening to you. Putting on my tie this evening, I thought about my father's dress code. And he never left the house generally without a tie. Even on a Sunday morning, going to the Vellavata market to buy his favorite sea fish head for our lunch, he still had his tie on. Of course, my father's taste was very subtle and simple compared to mine. There was a big difference. Engineer Professor Ranjan Ratnakar, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Chairman, Civil Engineering, and CEO, right? CEO of the Institute. Distinguished engineers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to say a few words on behalf of my father. Firstly, my father would want me to congratulate Engineer Professor Ranjan Ratnakar for being elected President of the prestigious Institute of Engineering. I know he will be exceptionally delighted to see a woman in that role. I know how happy he was when the first female student entered the Faculty of Engineering. I know my father would want me to express his humbleness, his gratitude and his appreciation at this magnanimous gesture by the Institute of Engineers and its members on holding this prestigious memorial talk each year to commemorate his birthday. This memorial talk also seems to provide a well-deserved platform for eminent engineers who have made significant contributions in their respective fields to be the guest speaker each year and to share their expertise. My father will be extremely delighted and proud with this gesture by the Institute. My father strongly believed that an essential task of an engineer is to add value to both the physical environment and to the human environment. In that respect, I am delighted that the Institute chose Engineer Palita to make this year's memorial talk. Engineer Palita has had an interesting and an outstanding practical career in his field of expertise, and I commend him on his achievements and message tonight on a critical component of human life. I am convinced that my father had a say by orchestrating a chance first meeting between Engineer Palita and myself at Singapore Airport earlier this year in bringing both Engineer Palita and me here tonight. My father tried extremely hard to make me an engineer. It is probably his greatest disappointment that he failed. It is also my regret. I can picture my father up there, contented and puffing away on his beloved pipe, but with a confused smile, confused as to how did I manage to sneak into this exclusive gathering of distinguished engineers, and even more astonished that I'm here speaking to you. For that, I sincerely thank the Institute for giving me this huge honor, for granting me temporary honorary status of an engineer. Much to the delight of my father. Looking around the audience here tonight, I notice many who would not have come across my father in any sense, and possibly wondering, why is he being honored in this way? Indeed, a very good question. Let me address your curiosity with a few anecdotes that may help to enlighten your thoughts. It was the time of the birth of the infant faculty of engineering at Pereira, and my father was totally immersed in the tedious, painful, and stressful process of its development. Growing up as kids, we realized that my father had two distinct families, one his own, and the other his beloved faculty of engineering, its students and its staff. On pure statistical evidence, there was no doubt that he spent a huge proportion of his time both physically and mentally creating the faculty of engineering. However, he never neglected his children, whom he blessed with an abundance of caring and love. During this period of the creation of the faculty, the new Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, visited Ceylon with a view to possibly replicate some of the successors in Ceylon into the new Singapore under his premiership. He visited the university and met my father at the emerging faculty of engineering. Lee Kuan Yew was so impressed that he promptly invited my father to come over to Singapore to do the same. It was an incredibly generous offer of salary, far exceeding that of the highest paid CEOs of private companies in Colombo. However, most graciously and politely, my father turned down the offer, saying that he still had unfinished business at the Faculty of Engineering. I understand that this meeting with my father is referred to in Lee Kuan Yew's autobiography. My father remained a poor man financially all his life, but was blessed with an unparalleled richness of precious human qualities. In subsequent years, he has offered on repeated occasions the post of Vice Chancellor of the University of Pereira. He turned them all down as he considered that his passion was teaching, the teaching of engineering students, not that of administration. His lifelong motto was, as you said, invest in people. However, the Prime Minister of Ceylon, Mr. Dudley Senaka, a fellow student at Cambridge University, visited my father at his home in Pereira and pleaded with my father to accept the post for the sake of the country. My father finally, reluctantly did so. It was undoubtedly the saddest moment in my father's life, having to say goodbye to his beloved Faculty of Engineering. I would like to relate a little story re Dudley Senaka and my father. The two of them and two others, Steve Senaka and Lynn Ludwig, were traveling from Cambridge to London. Steve Senaka was in charge of the tickets. They saw the ticket inspector coming down the aisle. Steve pulled out his tickets and said, "Oh my gosh, Dudley, I've lost your ticket." And at that time, it was a great problem with penalties. And my father came up with a lateral engineering solution. He suggested to Dudley, "You better get under the seat." And at that time, Dudley was a podgy, as was his later life. Somehow or other, he squeezed this guy under the seat, and they looked for the two guys with the most baggy pants so they can hide him as much as possible. When the ticket inspector came, Steve gave him the tickets, and he looked very surprised and confused. These guys obviously got very worried. He said, "You're three of you traveling here, but you're giving me 4 tickets." So my father said, "Yes, our dear friend here, he doesn't like to sit on a seat." And they all got up and said, there he is." And there was Dudley, furious. He never gave them for that. Anyhow, 3 or 4 weeks later, Dudley was cycling on the streets of Cambridge, and a cop pulled him up for some infringement. Said, "What is your name?" "Of course, my name is E.O.E. Pereira." My father had to pay the fine. Finally, I would like to quote an extract from a lovely article on my father titled "Scholar and Gentleman" that appeared in the Daily News of May 1987. It was written by a Dr. Brendan Gunaratne, who was a medical student when my father was Vice Chancellor. I quote directly from the article. "A blind undergraduate at one of the halls of residence had the misfortune to become pregnant to the young man, also blind, that she hoped to marry on completing her degree. The warden of the hall immediately banished her to a room, urged her fellow students to ostracize her instantly, and demanded that her relations, since both parents were dead, to remove her from the hall without delay. Hearing of this punishment, the Vice Chancellor drove up to the hall and spoke with a shamed student. Hearing of a sad situation, the Vice Chancellor and his wife then invited the disgraced student to stay with them at the lodge, which she did. This courtly and humanitarian action made possible the eventual marriage of the young couple, converting a social disgrace and suicide, possible suicide, into what has turned out to be a happy marriage. If you should ask me what legacy my father had left me with, I will say without any hesitation, it is a deep sense of compassion and a deep sense of humility. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence Pereira, for your heart-touching story or speech about your father. Finally, I cordially invite Engineer Lalit Pallegama, Chairman Civil Engineer in Sectional Committee, to lead with a vote of thanks.
Table and fellow engineers, it's my very pleasant duty and privilege on behalf of institution and on behalf of Civil Engineers Sectional Committee to propose hearty vote of thanks to all who have contributed to this process and this valuable occasion. With the feeling of some proud of as myself also from University of Pereira, and many of us, many of you all. So first we must appreciate our source person, Engineer Palita Manchanayaka, as a proud product of University of Pereira, who made us aware on the subject of water resources, hydrological forecasting. It was fantastic and very valuable for all seniors and juniors. Even though you live in far away from Sri Lanka, you are well knowledge with Sri Lankan technology. Actually, I like the way you introduce Bisokotu as one of engineering marvels. That was very fantastic. I heard word I heard from one senior engineer. That's a very good lesson for all of us. And we must thank. I know you came yesterday, and you came yesterday for ISL event to give your presentation. That was very dedicated. Thanks, Engineer Palita Manchanayaka. We all enlightened. Thank you very much. Next, I must thank especially Engineer Lawrence Pereira, because from March or April we continue had big discussion. So since Engineer Lawrence Pereira, who was coordinating Engineer Manchanayaka's presence here, so we all have to thanks to you, sir. Not only that, you gave a good introduction, good enlightenment about Professor E.O. Pereira. Actually, that didn't happen in last year or previous years. That was very fantastic. We all learned a lot about our hero. Actually, thank you very much, sir. Next, I must thank a very special person, because as I remembered, I got a call on March. Pallegama, you have to organize, you have to coordinate, and you have to get resource person for the E.O. Pereira Memorial Lecture. That was in March actually. That was from our president, Professor Ranjini Rattanayaka. That call came from March. We see that her leadership, and from that onward, she followed this process. Thank you, madam. Thanks for your great leadership. Next, I must thank all participants, especially for family members from E.O. Pereira, Professor E.O. Pereira, and some friends, and family members from our resource person also. Then I must thank Professor Liananda Rajapaksa and other representatives from University of Pereira. Next, some council members and past presidents also. We must thank your presence about your presence. Finally, I must thank all engineers and engineering students and ladies and gentlemen who were present. Unless you all, it would not be reality. Finally, I must thank our section committee members and ISL staff. Especially, my thanks goes to our Executive Secretary, Engineer Neil. With that, I would like to wind up my vote of thanks and wishing you all the very best of luck and have a safe journey back to you. Good night.